thank you very much for being here. I guess you're more interested in publications than in careers in the technology sector. Let me first do my little acknowledgement of country, because it's the first time on a stage since I joined. So what matters for me, it's I asked here when I got from overseas, what does it mean? An indigenous person told me, you have to transmit what matters for you. And for me, it is that I ask for permission from the federal government to come here to this country, but I never ask the traditional owners of this country to be here. So I want to acknowledge that they are the traditional owners and I am their guest. So let me just say that first. Well, second thing, probably I shouldn't be here. Jake Goldenfing, that you all know, it's the chair of this committee, of what is called the Working Paper Series Committee, which actually we do more than Working Paper Series. So we have been thinking about changing its name to something like publications or something like that. But part of the publications is not under our kind of control. So we don't want to overexpand our work either. But let me just acknowledge that I'm here representing Ramon Lobato, Aaron Snowell, Kobe Calix, Dan Yang, and obviously the work of Lauren de la Cruz, which is always what makes this committee work. And so I'm just going to briefly introduce what we're trying to do, what kind of we have done until now, and the perspectives for you here and you and people on Zoom about what we can do for you in the end, because you are going to be the ones that are going to be producing the knowledge that we are going to put on a publication track. First of all, Working Paper Series, it's kind of a complicated name because it looks like we are producing something which is, that's it. It's like the typical article for a journal that you're publishing a working paper series, and then it goes to a journal. Then we thought, well, is that a preprint? And we said no, because there are better places to get preprint, so that doesn't make any sense if it's going to be in the same format somewhere else. So we thought that we would publish something that is the work that we are doing at the center for people with at least one of the authors connected to the center, and that can produce something that they want. They are getting kind of to a final stage, but they are still not at the completely complete level. So it gets some editorial revision, like mainly English, spelling, structure, like kind of things, and we would write some comments, but it does not involve a peer review. And that has been kind of the main pillar of what we are doing. But then we thought that there are many other things that the center does that are probably need to be on paper so people can cite them, use them, exploit them, so and achieve some kind of impact, societal impact, as our +S clearly hints at. And we created the report series, so projects that people at the center are completing, ongoing, at the stage that they feel that they have something to share, but it's not necessarily a journal type article. So it is, sometimes they have something on methodology, sometimes they have something on what the findings are, but kind of on a not final formal stage. So, but that is the kind of knowledge that we're also interested in having. Then we thought, well, yes, but at the same time we have the conference proceedings. And we thought, yes, but actually conference proceedings, we cannot be publishing every single paper that comes to a conference. And we thought, well, but we can do something in between. We can try to ask the people organizing the conference to summarize what they have been talking about and the findings. So for any of you that are participating, organizing in a conference, that is another possibility. If you can have a note taker that is suffering through the process of actually taking notes of each presentation, and then there are edits, or the people actually they're presenting want to do kind of a summarized version of it and publish it all together. It's also interesting to see what the kind of things that the different parts of the center are discussing in other settings. And then the fourth pillar that we still have no publications there, is the policy part of it. So we thought we need also something where we can have the submissions that the center are doing, the people in the center are doing, the papers for government, the papers that try to influence policy in Australia or at the state level or internationally, it doesn't matter, but that we are targeting, addressing someone, because those ones, yes, they are very likely going to be published by the federal government, for example, and they are going to have it there, but they are going to be much more difficult to discover. And in this process, we are also working with APO, who is the one that is going to mint the papers and give it a an ORCID number. So you're going to be able to track it and hopefully even be found by Google Scholar at some point. So you also get some citations out of it. And with that, and I feel tempted to say something, which I know has been not completely decided at the level of the committee, but we are also trying to explore what is an open peer review system. So with a working paper series, we think, well, this is not final, but there's so much expertise within the center. People that can enrich papers that we have produced. So we get kind of a final paper, but before we send it to a journal, it would be nice if we could get all that expertise and the topics flagged by everybody at the center, so people can comment openly and say, well, it would be interesting to add this, or have you thought about this other approach? And then the moment that you actually send it out for publication somewhere else, it will be kind of, it has gone through a process of a workshop type thing, but in a digital format and written format. So any of you that have an idea about how to do that, we are welcoming any kind of contributions about. From the technology side, we know it's complicated, but at the same time, we think it's worth exploring. If not in this center, well, where else? And with that, I'm going to go quiet and just pass the floor to all the people that have already published in the paper series. And if you can tell us a bit about your project and also your experience of publication, so people get an idea about how it has worked, in which series you have published and what is it about and how the interaction came out. And Axel, you're first.
All right, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you all for coming along to this. I have had the privilege, I guess, to publish what I think was the first of the working papers that ADM+S published. I think actually kind of before even the committee was formed. So this was kind of a very first early step into developing this working paper series. And in part it was simply born out of necessity as well. So this first working paper is about the Australian search engine search experience project, which many of you will know about, which was really also one of the first kind of major projects, I guess, to get going in the center itself. And we found really quite early on that there was a need to have a strong, clear background paper on the project itself. Speaking to journalists, speaking to other community organizations, other partners that were trying to get involved in promoting the project and just helping them understand what the project is. You know, I mean, I can talk about it and talk about it at length and explain it to people individually, but it's actually quite useful also to have something on paper or at least on PDF that summarizes the entire project and explains how it works, its logic, its motivations, but also a little bit more broadly, perhaps, the idea of a data donation process, which is really what this is building on. So involving the general public as citizen scientists, as people producing and contributing their data to this research project, in our case, via a browser plugin. All of this and these details really need some explanation, need to be documented quite clearly, so that, you know, journalists that you talk to, community organizations that you talk to, members of the general public that you talk to also have all of this black on white and have a clear understanding, can gain a clear understanding from this, this paper of how the project works, whether it's something they want to be involved in, whether it's something they want to recommend to their own members or readers or whoever else they might be. And yet to have all of this in a clearly and easily accessible format. So that's really what this first working paper as a background paper to the Search Experience Project does. And what I hope is, you know, where I hope it's clear enough to do it as well, obviously, in what it provides. It doesn't provide any information about the outcomes of the project. That's for us to do in further peer-reviewed publications. But it also provides that basis. So in talking about the results from this project, we can simply now refer to this background paper as the paper that explains the inner workings of the project itself without having to explain everything from scratch again in every publication that we generate from all of this. So for that also, the working paper obviously is very useful. So in many ways, the logic for us was really to store all of the almost boilerplate information, background information about this project in this working paper, have it out, get it out there, put it on APO, give it a DOI, have it readily accessible, so that then becomes the basis for the actual research work that we do with this project, without having to just explain everything from scratch again every time that we do it. So yeah, I think I'd love you all to have a read and see if it's clear enough, see if it explains the project well enough, and hopefully, yeah, as we go for other publications beyond this, it will become the basis for the actual research that we do with this project. And I think I might leave it there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. So we continue. Paul, can you share your experience?
Thank you very much. Well, the working paper number 2 is really a summary or a proceedings from an event that we held in November 2020. And at starting up the centre and with the focus area of social services, which I'm responsible for, it seemed to me that we have experts in the centre, have expert connections across the world, already have been doing work in automated decision making and social services. So it was important for me to say, how do we bring that as expertise together and share this? So what we did was we've run a series of workshops on mapping automated decision making and social services. And this first one was on child protection service and family services. Now, I feel a bit of a fraud sitting up here because we've got my co-editor, who's Lyndall, who's in the audience, and one of the authors of one of the sections, Associate Professor Philip Gillingham, is also in the audience. And I've asked Philip to use my other 2.5 minutes to talk about his section in the report.
Turn this on. Turn the microphone on.
Yep. Go.
Is that better?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Notice I nearly got a promotion then, but no chair on there, so not the full thing. Child protection agencies around the world are trying to develop tools using automated decision-making techniques. The problem being that they're very expensive projects and a lot of them have failed. So one thing I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years is actually looking very closely at these projects, trying to interview the people involved, to work out exactly what went wrong so that we can obviously do better in the future. That's a very short summary, but that's a bit what I've been doing.
Yeah, that's better than the 2.5 minutes that you were given.
Well, no chair, you don't get 2.5 minutes. I'm sorry.
You want to answer?
So just a follow up is that we found this process really helpful because we've already, through the Australian Policy Online, we've already been contacted by the New South Wales Ombudsman. So clearly having these things published through that mechanism is helping also get the work of the centre out into the community and out to other communities other than the university sector. So it's great.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. And because we don't want to make the paper series look only for very senior established scholars, we'll also have a recorded message from Kelsey, who also published in the working paper series. I don't know if we can put it up.
Hi there, my name is Kelsey Nab and I'm a researcher in ADM+S and a PhD candidate. And today I'd like to talk about a working paper for the ADM+S series on decentralized data governance and are decentralized autonomous organizations able to operate like data trusts. So what are decentralized autonomous organizations? Often known as DAOs, this phrase has kind of received sort of mainstream attention in blockchain communities predominantly, where the concept is being developed both theoretically and in practice around ways to organize that are mediated by software. And it's really a group of people with a shared aim. So that's a very broad definition, but as these organizational forms evolve, there is no one sort of firm definition. But the idea is that the rules of the system between participants are somehow sanctioned in software. And so what I'm exploring in this paper is how the operation of DAOs could relate to the concept of data trusts. So data trusts themselves are quite a cutting edge data governance model around kind of bottom-up participatory systems that are enforced in law, so in the legal system, where people can contribute their data, and that pooled data can be allocated to a beneficiary to kind of steward that as a resource and act in line with their preferences or for the benefit of those participants. And so what I'm exploring here is what happens if a decentralized autonomous organization was the kind of trusted fiduciary for people's data. And the goal here, kind of building on those blockchain community ideals, is around having an accountability and enforcement layer for the system based in software code. So rather than relying on traditional sort of sovereign legal accountability, where if data is lost or mishandled, it's a very kind of lengthy and resource intensive pursuit to try and find recourse for that. Could there be some, rules that are set up within the software and kind of automated components, so smart contract automated processes of a DAO that could provide that accountability and enforcement to ensure that the DAO actually operates in line with the preferences of the contributors of data. And so this has actually come out as a very sort of timely contribution to the space. There's a number of different projects that are sort of playing in the area of data management, data marketplaces, including Ocean Protocol, Filecoin, data streaming through a project called Streamer, and a number of others. And so now, as these kind of Web3 or decentralized attempts at more sort of accountable and enforcement data governance models occur, learning from existing models and what works, especially those from kind of more participatory or cooperative kind of ethos and methods, has been an important contribution to the field. And so there's actually a number of projects now that are experimenting with implementing this model. And it's also really relevant moving forward in terms of kind of gaining better literacy. So building some of those bridges between communities of legal or cooperative people and the sort of blockchain communities that are trying to sort of invent and build some of these systems. And so I invite you to read the paper. I really welcome your engagement on it. And I hope to have conversations with people to follow up on this. Thank you.
That is very much the spirit of the working paper series. You have something there which could be an article, but may not, and you try to engage people inside and outside the center to share their views, read. So in that sense, the open peer review idea, we are kind of testing it with that. And then finally, Jean, your last but not least.
Thank you. Thanks for convening this conversation. And it's really exciting to have such a nice suite of working papers to start the series off. So I think the one that I helped shepherd through was the most recent, probably the most rapid turnaround ever, because we set ourselves the deadline of being able to launch it at this launch. And I think you submitted it last Friday after a very, I'm really grateful to the blind reviewer from the committee who gave us some actually really useful feedback, which we were able to incorporate, but it all happened within days. So thank you so much to Lauren and Kathy as well for that. And this paper is the next in what I hope will be a consistent series of working papers within the bit of the data program that tries to develop new tools and methods for public oversight of automated content curation moderation in platforms. So the first one is Axel's, and not only because Axel is masterful at structuring documents, we very closely modeled the Ad Observatory one, on the search experience one, because we want to have a consistent look and feel and structure and a logic to these things. And that's because with these types of projects, particularly that are involved in that involve data donation and citizen science, as Axel said, we're out there in public talking about them a lot. We're in the, Dan Angus is famously on Sunrise to talk about the Ad Observatory, to try to, and that attracts more media attention. It attracts the attention of some of the national regulators who haul us in and say, what's this project about? And so given that we're a research centre and not only are creating buzz about stuff we do centre, it's super important that we actually outline what our questions are, what our motivations are, that we acknowledge the prior art or prior work that's gone into our project. So we talk about the methods in a bit of concrete detail. Outside of that peer review system, which in many ways would get in the way of being able to do that effectively. So the most recent one is similar to the search experience, background paper on the Australian Ad Observatory project. But alongside that, also with, and I should mention this, the Ad Observatory project itself is led by Dan and Mark Andreevich, with a large team of people who are involved in various bits and pieces of the tool building, the analysis that will come down the track, some of that prior work and so on. But alongside that, a similarly large group of us also published a similar kind of working paper outside of the ADMS, I think prior to the establishment of the series, and put it up at SOC Archive, which is one of the preprint servers. And that's quite a long article that tries to really think through the more conceptual, philosophical aspects of the methods that we're using in these projects, particularly this idea of critical simulation that we're developing across a number of projects. And it's quite detailed, it's quite technical, and we did it that way because we wanted to get this out. We need to cite it, as Axel was saying, when we're actually going to analyze data and trying to make an argument in that 8,000 word scope that you have for a journal article. But we don't want to have the peer review process mess up our opportunity to just explain what we're trying to do and what motivates us and how we're thinking through it. And I think it's really important to take some of these new opportunities to do that. We'll see if it gets cited a lot. It'll get cited by us when we're trying to write the journal articles. But I think we're at a really interesting moment in academic publishing where we have various different conflicting kind of incentives and imperatives. But it's also a wonderful opportunity that being funded by an Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence means that we have to try to get stuff out in an open format, in a usable format, published on the APO, which gives it a DOI, which makes it and does get it used by policymakers, or just getting stuff out for the scholarly community to make sure that we're starting the conversations that we want to have without worrying about incentives and metrics and KPIs. So yeah, get into it.
Excellent. Thanks so much for all of you for sticking to the 5 minutes. I thought it was going to be a nightmare, and it has been the easiest moderation ever. Two comments though from what we have heard. The first one is the APO. For those of you who are not aware of it, if you Google it, you will see it's a digital repository, and the whole point is having an open access evidence platform. So it is targeting like evidence that could be used by other people. So it is ideally perfectly aligned with the objectives of the center. So in that sense, it is the perfect place for us to mint everything that we're doing.